Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I'm stepping in for Kathy this morning because she is on a training day. So it's wonderful to have you all with me. Um, when I was thinking about a topic for this, I was thinking, what's going on for me? Because that seems to be what Kathy does. What's going on for her? And let's talk about it. So, and I think one of the things that has been reoccurring for me in the themes within my business, but also within my life most recently, is this idea of transitions and how we manage the transitions in our life. And I guess more than anything right now, I'm leaning into how does perspective influence how we manage those transitions. And I thought it might be nice to workshop some of the things that each of us perhaps have tried and maybe found useful in dealing with transitions, but even in terms of what are your go-tos? What have you experienced in that? And I guess for me, some of the bigger transitions, or one of the transitions that that I've been going through recently. So I'm currently going through perimenopause. So it's a transition. I've been
Oh,
through matrescence, that journey from maiden to mother. Obviously, I've gone from child to woman. I've gone from maiden to mother. I've gone from single to married. I haven't gone back the other way. He's pretty lucky. So, um, um, but there's all these transitions that we do in our life. I've gone from mother to grandmother. Um, from employee to entrepreneur and business owner. There are lots of different transitions that we kind of have in our life, and I don't know that there's a huge amount of support out there for people who are transitioning, but they seem to be an almost constant in our life that we're going through these different transitions. Um, and I guess what's prompted this for me is going through perimenopause. There's a lot of talk out there about perimenopause right now as being something to get through. Like it's a shit show. It's hard, and it's gonna knock you on your feet. And I don't want to do it that way. I want perimenopause to be a becoming. And I just created a course actually called the Becoming Portal to help people shift their mindset around it. But, I thought, well, what other areas in our life and what other tools do we have to help us in transition? Um, because I feel like how we approach it makes a big difference to how we experience it, if that makes sense.
mm.
So go.
Oh my God. I just want to say thank you for this topic. It's really beautiful. It's interesting because when I hear transition, I instantly think of Rob's passing. And
Mm.
it's really beautiful that you just brought it back for me to the living space because I call Rob's passing anniversary his transition anniversary. But it's another form of transitioning, and I think change is the only constant in our life. So we go through various transitioning pretty much every single day, but some of the events are so much bigger and last for quite some time. But it's all really like our entire life is transitioning, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I
Mhm.
think so. And I think if we are, the one thing, you're right, the one thing we can rely on is that there will be change. How do we approach that in our life to make sure that we come out the other side of it having absorbed every moment of that for the good? And I think I shared with you guys last year sometime that idea from Dan Sullivan around transformative relationships and leading into every opportunity or every interaction as an opportunity for transformation. And that's not just with between people. I feel like that there's an opportunity in the changes in our life to do that too, and be transformed by the transition. If that too many T
Yeah.
words for my causal brain right now, but that's kind of what I was thinking.
Terrific.
There's an interesting, love the topic, right? Interesting thing that's been coming up for me in the last few days. Well, not last few days, just been ideas and thoughts sort of been popping up around. It's not just self-transition, but also the transition of the world. and how we're operating or integrating and I guess being involved in the world. And a big thing that's come up around that is identity within the transition. And I think the help within that space is like, how do we go through transition if we don't know ourselves prior to that? And it makes it more challenging. And this has taken it to I guess, a different sort of level of looking at how quickly the AI sort of world is taking hold. And people are coming up with there's fear, there's overwhelm, there's anxiety, there's so many things that are coming up. It's like, it's going to take my jobs, it's going to take my life, it's going to take my identity. Because how many people put themselves in a container of, I'm a builder, I'm an architect, I'm a something. You know, their job is their identity. And if they lose that, then where do they stand? And it's not only their job, but then it's their time. If they're used to being busy so much, busy in life, busy with family, busy, and yet we want freedom, we want automation, and now it's coming real fast that we'll have the automation, but our internal dialogue and our internal identity and self hasn't caught up or isn't in a space to have that support, like you said, Phil. Supporting understanding who we are, supporting in what actually matters to me when I do have the freedom, when I do have financial abundance. It's just, you know, the freedom within that space that it's promising in the future years. What matters to us most, really? I suppose in perimenopause and in the transitions of life, what matters to us in those moments and trying to hold on to what we've been through and stepping into the unknown of where we're going. Because, you know, we can read books and we can study, we can research and listen to other people's stories, but the physical transition that happens, you know, with our bodies emotionally and physically in those states is where it gets challenging. And that's where the confusion and overwhelm kicks in, because we're like, but I used to be like this. I was this. I had that. I did this. But then you go into an unknown. It's like, well, who am I really now? And I suppose that's where we can try and, I guess, pull it back in and simplify as best as possible. I think we were talking about this last week, Marie, and talking about joy, finding the joy in your life and then doing more of that. In those transition challenged moments, to be able to take yourself out for a minute and, as I love, take a breath and step into a space of, well, where's my joy now? Where's my joy in this experience?
And in
If
the
that can
transitioning.
soften, in the transition. Like you say, as you're transitioning in your life, it's like you don't want to just get through it and that's job done. It's like, how do we enjoy it? Because that's what we're here for, experience, right?
Absolutely. It's interesting. I did a TikTok recently around this idea of so one of the transitions, obviously, with perimenopause is the unpredictability of your cycle. And I'd gotten pretty used to my cycle being fairly regular and being able to lean into when are my high energy zones, when are my low energy zones, and making the most of that within my work life, right? But when you have an 84-day cycle and you don't know when that's going to end, you can't plan. But the joy for me was in finding that listening allowed me to just lean into what I was feeling. And so it actually allowed me to get more in touch with who I am, because and what's working for me and what my body's telling me, because I had to. I didn't have any other choice but to listen to what my body said. And I was, when everybody was doing chill out time over Christmas and New Year's, etc., I was working 12-hour days because I was in flow. I'm like, oh, I've got all these ideas, I'm really creative, I'm gonna do all this stuff, and I got a whole bunch done. Like, I really got busy. But society said I should have been resting. But when my cycle came, I was like, that's it, I'm out. I'm doing the bare minimum because that's what my body said, right? And that felt really good to honor that. And I wonder how often we're not honoring because we're not listening, because we're so stuck in who we were, that we aren't listening to who we want to be and what the opportunity is for us if we listen and lean in and find the joy in the transition.
Yeah.
I think for me, sorry, I just want to throw this in very, very quickly, make this super short. I think for me, in the transitioning part, it's finding those things that are actually incredible. Because it's so easy to go into all the hard parts, oh, the night sweats and the unpredictability of everything, rather than going like, what's actually good in this, you know? And that's one of my favorite life questions. What's good about this? So I'm just going to throw that in there. Sorry, Connie.
Yeah, no worries. I mean, this is my jam, right? I'm the menopause navigator, so this is my passion of working with women. And as you said, Philippa, so much of what we hear about menopause is it's awful, and you're never going to feel the same. You're never going to feel sexy. You're not going to want to have sex. All these types of things, right? And when I was told that, and of course, when I went through it, perimenopause wasn't even a word. Like perimenopause is a new word that started to come up. And when I was just told there was nothing I could do other than go on hormone therapy, I thought, no, no, there's always options. And the one thing that brought me extreme joy was my very last cycle and not having another cycle after that. And I'm like, oh my God, this is heaven. This is the best time of my life. And I mean, I embraced it. I'm just like, wow, this is amazing, because I never had those, I didn't have to go through those energy cycles anymore. My energy was always sustained, which felt amazing. And then when you figure out, as you say, anything we're transitioning through, we kind of have to figure out, okay, how do I deal with this? How do I work with this? How do I make this the best for me? And a very big part of it is going inside, listening, right? Listening to ourselves. And it's so common for women to not listen, just to push. It's like, I'm not feeling great, but somebody needs this, or I have to do this, or, the expectations around us. And I think that that's a part of transitioning as well, too, is all the expectations that we feel are on us when we're going through this transition. And it's so important to kind of sit back and go, what do I need in this moment through this transition? One of the situations I ran into after my mom passed away is I seem to be that person that a lot of people like to come to and lean on. And, I'm a good listener. And I had a close friend that was going through a difficult time at the same time that I'm trying to make sense of the whole thing after my mom's passing. And she was telling me all her troubles, and I just said, I have nothing to give right now. Like I can't, like, I'm struggling myself. I have nothing to give right now. And unfortunately, her response was quite negative. She's like, you've abandoned me. And I said, I'm sorry you feel that way, but I have to look after myself. And that can sometimes be the hardest part of the transition, of knowing you need to look after yourself, and you may disappoint people. And that's not about you, that's about them, right? If they don't understand. So yeah, it's all about coming inside. And you're right, Marie, it is all about, and Paul, all about finding that joy, right? Finding those joyful moments, like, how can I make the best of this? One of the things I did in perimenopause with my hot flashes, in fact, I still have it here somewhere, my beautiful silk fan. And I would pull that out, and I'm like, I'm good.
Just got one too. I just keep forgetting.
Christmas.
A friend of mine has a set of those. But this was great in meetings, like when I was still in the corporate world, and I would just pull this out and I'm like, I'm good.
I sat around a table on Friday morning for brunch, and everyone had a fan in their purse.
I love this. I need one.
These are great. These are $10 at Kmart. I think my daughter bought it for me for Christmas. She's like, and she bought one for her mother-in-law as well, because she's like, we both going through it. So welcome, Nicole, talking about transitions of any kind. I just happen to be transitioning in perimenopause at the moment, so it's an interesting, fun time. But we're talking about how we deal with that, and what tools and approaches we take to dealing with any sort of transition. Angie, you've got your microphone off. Did you have something to share?
Oh, do I have it on or off? Can you hear me?
We
We
can hear
can hear
you.
you 100%.
Oh, okay, okay. Yeah, the only thing that was coming for me was, my life. I've been through, a transition or two, and not in the middle of any transition has it felt anything, but yucky and difficult,
Mm,
you know. Um, but when I think about it, to me, transition has always been growth.
mm,
And you don't think about that when you're going through, speaking for myself, I don't think about that when I'm going through a transition necessarily all the time, because there's been lots of times where I want to leave the old parts behind and think, well, this transition is going to be, putting me here. And then I'm not that person anymore because I've gone through whatever transition that may have been. But that's not where the best growth for me has come from. It's been knowing that no matter how bad it sucks, the transition has always, if I look back on it, and when I chronicle it, every transition has been some sort of growth for me. And if no matter how bad it gets, and I've had some pretty emotionally, I told you, broken times. And one of the things that's helped keep me grounded to living, in the past was knowing that, if I stick with the values of my childhood and I stick with the values of my dad and I stick with my history, I know that if I can get through whatever this is, then I know that somehow there's going to be the ability to see growth in me as a human being. I hope that makes sense the way I'm saying that, because I suffered at different times in my life wanting to get through that transition and disassociate myself from the person that was before the transition because of the trauma of the transition, so to speak, right? But that's not where the growth came from. The growth came from knowing the before and knowing the now. And so that's how transition, no matter what those transitions have been for me, hasn't always been easy or good. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, Dan Sullivan calls that the gap and the gain in his book. He talks about this idea that as humans, we'll always have a goal. There'll always be somewhere we want to get to that we're not in now, right? And this idea that
Yes.
if we're constantly looking for the horizon, and I think I've talked about this before, but constantly looking to the horizon, we'll never get there if that's the goal, because it keeps moving every step we take. But
Right.
the joy, the happiness is in looking at how far we've come. What have we gained in that time? And that's where, if we can lean into that through transitions as well, I think, where was I 6 months ago or 2 years ago or 5 years ago? How far have I come?
Right.
That's where your happiness sits, right?
Yes.
I think so. Just to that, sorry.
I just wanted to I'll make it quick again. I think it's about being in the moment that's so crucial, and that's so tricky at times. It's so easy to always look back at what we had, or not often in a good way, as in how far we've come, or looking into the future of like what else is there to do, or how much work is there to be done, or how much growth. But to really be in the moment and enjoy that, that's really tricky. It's yeah, with our world that we live in, there's always the future and where we're not yet, and bigger and better and faster. And I'm like, just, it's very relaxing and grounding to come back into the moment. Sorry,
I
Paul.
think living in the moment is the gold standard, and that's hard to learn.
Yeah.
It's hard to learn to be able to take a difficult moment and turn it into that moment of reality.
Yeah.
So looking into that, Angie, how do you notice the transition? Because I totally get it, and I know my experience as well. It's like I know when I'm in that pain moment, in that challenge, And it's hard to yeah, like we put it out there and say, let's find joy, but it's really hard. Is the last thing you want to be doing is searching for joy because you're so pissed off at everything. But it's like in those
Right.
moments, like what is that moment that we get to flick the switch and change the perspective in those moments that help us through? What worked for you?
I think I've known a terrifying number of people who have taken their life. Some very personally, and some just kind of professionally, acquaintances, and community acquaintances. And years ago, and I know in 2019, Paul, I was kind of to that point, right? But I held on to what I knew was that last little piece of hope in a very dark place inside me, that said, you're going to reach out for help. And I think that was, for me, that was the difference, was having that little, whatever that voice was inside of me, whether that was my childhood or my values or whatever that happened to be, or not wanting to give up. I remember calling my counselor. This is pretty raw. I called my counselor on February 15th of 2019. We had a great relationship. And I said, I don't want to do it, but I'm going to do it today unless we fix this. And so it was a tiny little nugget, inside me. And that's when it gets pretty extreme, I know. But I've also known far too many people who haven't been able to identify that they have that nugget inside of themselves. And that's a tragedy. And I didn't want to be that tragedy. But I think the encouragement to anyone who's going through a struggle or a transition always has to be preaching hope. And that's like the last crumb of bread on the plate. But it's all it takes. That's all it took for me. I hope that helps you understand.
God, you made that phone call as well, because some people don't have, some people aren't able to do that. So
yes, that's right, and that's a tragedy. And I think you can see that in someone's soul. I think if you know someone personally, you don't even have to necessarily know them personally to be able to look into their eyes and see their soul. When I was working with the special needs children for 20 years, people said, "You have no experience doing this. How are you doing this?" And I said, "I don't know. I'm just like looking in their eyes and I'm trying to see what they need." And sometimes you can see in someone that they just need to explode with excitement, and sometimes you just see that someone needs to explode with a moment of kindness and quiet. But it takes knowing people. And I'm just grateful that I knew myself at that time. People who don't have that ability, it can be very tragic. But I know that in the work that you all do, that to me is my greatest hope for people who do your work, right? Is that when you see someone, that's what you're looking for. And I what we call when you go to universities and you sit amongst a panel and you present, and then people get to ask you questions and all of that kind of stuff. I was used years ago a lot of times in psychology, classes at university, in different, gender studies and all those sorts of things. And they said, what do you want us to take away? And I always said, always see yourself as the last person this person is going to talk to or call. Don't try to academic them. Think that you are always the last line of defense in their journey to stay alive. If that's the person they come to you and reveal that weakness to you. I wish that had been there for me, and I'm grateful that I found it inside myself. But that was always my guidance to the young people, in those classes who were working toward their degrees. Always, no matter what's going on in your life, see yourself as the last ray of hope for the person that comes through your door. And that's how you can tell if somebody needs it.
Mm.
Well, that's hard to follow.
I think there is this real intensity of when we are going through a transition that feels extremely hard in the moment, and we have no way of knowing how long that's going to take, And I
Yes.
feel people who are so at the end of the line with hope and with strength to get through this and not knowing how do I ask for help. I think that's a huge thing in transitioning and in general in life. How do I ask for help? A lot of us have not learned that, and especially a lot of us with strong women as moms or strong parents that always soldier on and carry on, and there's also
Right.
the male has to be strong and can't be emotional, the mom carries on, and I think we all grew up in a world like that, or most of us did. And I realized only in Rob's passing and how to deal with it, how freaking important it was for me to allow my children to see the weak moments, that it's not always, because the
Yes, of
expectation
course.
on them by always being strong, always holding the fort, always being happy and cheerful, and we've got this. No, there are days where I freaking don't have it, and I just want to scream and cry and curl up in a ball and hide. I usually don't tend to, revert to those solutions, but I feel that way sometimes, and I am also now not shy to share that anymore. I mostly share it in words now, not that I would start kicking and screaming, but I do talk about my emotions with them, and I have no problem at all anymore to just burst into tears in front of them if I have a moment where it just overcomes me, because I realized how important it was for my boys to see that. The expectation I put on them to be strong at the age of 10 and 8 when they lost their dad, it would have probably broken me. I couldn't see that for a while, and I'm glad that I did see it in the end. And one thing I wanted to add to this whole idea of transitioning, because, when I said to you before, my first thought that I went to was Rob's transitioning, as in transitioning to the other world. I'm just going to call it what I feel it like. That to me was a reason why, when I first started working in grief, one of the very first journeys that I offered the group that I had built was called Who Am I After Loss? And I think it's not even so much the after loss, it's the after the transitioning, because obviously my husband died, but then who am I after that? And I felt that in that question, there is so much choice that we don't realize. And mostly when it comes to transitioning, as in death, people feel hopelessness, helplessness, no choice. I had no choice in this. But I mean, Paul and I, like, we go way back in terms of our coaching training. And one of the things that we were always bombarded with is like, we always have a choice. And it took me a long time to actually really, really, truly, deeply understand that. And I realized the choice that I have in this is, how do I respond to it? What do I do with it? And what do I show to my boys in terms of how I handle it, or the choices that we have in handling it, in responding to it? And there was this moment of, well, who am I after loss? As in, I was looking at all these parts of me, as you said before, Philippa, the little girl in me, and then who I was growing up, the adolescent and the single person and the wife. And so, okay, now I'm not a wife anymore. And what are the other parts left of me? The girlfriend, the best friend, the whatever. And what are the parts that I actually love? What are the parts I felt like I could literally collect all the things that I loved about me and carry that into my new self, use them as building blocks, and then took some new blocks, some complete new ones that I never looked at. And to say it in your favorite word, Philippa, have the curiosity to look at, what do I actually love? What lights me up?
Yes.
Who do I want to be? How do I want to show up as in this life? And as a leader in the field that I work in, the work that I do, but also in particular, just as me, Marie, the woman. What do I want in life? What makes me happy? And all these choices, I think they're enormous gifts. And again, I often call them the hidden gifts in adversity. But in this case, I would probably rather say in a transitioning world rather than in adversity. It doesn't always have to be adversity, only because it's hard, it's just a transitioning. And yeah, I love it. I love that you chose this topic for today. Thank you.
It's really interesting because one of the things that has come up for me during this transition, and maybe it's because, along with particularly perimenopause, there's this shift into, do I really need to be the same person I was before? Because the same person I was before was the one that everybody came to, the one who always said yes, the one who was, and it's interesting because, and I was talking to my business coach about this yesterday. I said to her, I finally landed on the name for my keynote speech. She's like, oh, what is it? And I said, okay, you ready? So it's when resilience curdles into resentment.
Goosebumps.
So, yeah, because we are often so resilient that we just keep saying yes, we keep doing what we have to do, we keep all those things, but at some point that becomes resentment if we're not careful and if we're not choosing it purposefully and with intention. And so I think when we're, in these moments of transitions, we do get to say goodbye to pieces that we don't want anymore. And we get to show up with intention. And yes, I think it's about choice, right? Choice of perception, choice of understanding, choice of, hope, choice of what we want to achieve through this, and curiosity, of course, because, who knows? There might be more in this transition than we ever thought was possible, and being curious about what might be there for us on the other side of that. But I really I'm leaning into this whole idea of, resilience is great until it's not. And it's not just, continuing to be resilient for the sake of being resilient is not always going to serve us as human beings, nor will it always serve our family, right? Like, Connie, your piece is put yourself first, right? And I was always that mum on the plane who, when they said, put your own oxygen mask on first, I'm like, no way, that's not the kind of mother I am, But then when I had my third, when I had my third burnout and my youngest children were still only, 10 and 13. And I still, I think I had a 16-year-old, a 15-year-old, a 13-year-old, and a 9-year-old, right? So I had two that were nowhere near done. And two that were kind of getting there, right? But I was like, what if I don't make it through and I can't finish bringing up these children? At some point, I need to start putting myself first so that and putting my own oxygen mask on so that I'm actually still going to be there to do that for my youngest two. And that burnout was my reckoning moment to say, actually, no, it's nice to think that you can be that parent, but it actually isn't serving your children.
Or yourself.
Yeah, 100%. But my purpose at that point, or where everything came from me, was my children. So I actually had to link that concept to my mothering, not to me, because I wasn't there yet. I wasn't in a space yet where I thought of myself as being necessarily worthy of that work. I just needed to be better for my kids, because that's where I was still at. Whereas now I can go, yeah. No, I'm doing that for me. Last Thursday, I took the whole day off and I went to a day spa. Whole day. I know. It was fabulous. But, these are the things that we, I guess we lean into in different ways. But, yeah.
I'm shamelessly tell you that I am taking every Thursday off. I started it last year and I'm still doing it. I'm not necessarily going to a day spa every time. I don't think I would be in a budget, but I have every Thursday now because
I'm
I
doing that too
notice that
this
if
year.
I don't do that,
Yeah.
I literally drive myself back into the next burnout because I've been there and it's not fun. And it takes way longer to get out than you actually realize. It really takes a long time to build different habits and take care of yourself. And being a sole parent and a sole income earner, obviously, I noticed the necessity of not just having the weekends, because as an entrepreneur, I often worked on weekends as well because it's fun. I love it, so you don't realize, and then you keep, slaying away, but don't feel it as slaying, but your body does. And that's when I realized I need a me day when the boys are at school, where it's literally just me and I can do whatever the freak I want with that time. And if I want to sleep in, I sleep in. And if I want to go to the beach, I go to the beach. I want to, go out with friends for coffee or whatever. But it is me time, no business. And I love it. I've been doing it for almost a year now, and it's really highly recommendable.
I love that. You know, my small gift to myself is setting the alarm so late that I know I'll wake up before it. And I just love waking up without an alarm.
Mm.
It feels and not, my kids are all not at school anymore, so I don't have any of those pressures, and I can set my day around what I want to do. But I just love feeling like I can wake up whenever I want and there's no alarm. It feels luxurious to
Yeah.
me.
Yeah, I can only imagine.
Yes, one day. Oh dear.
That's
Nicole,
sort of too, isn't it? It's where you look into. I'm sorry, Connie.
No, go ahead, Paul.
Just on that, the alarm moment, it just got me thinking about how often, like, if you book a holiday or you have an event on the weekend, you look forward to that, but you bypass every other day leading up to it because it's hard. And so that and what do you get out of the holiday, or what are you looking forward to in that holiday? It's like to have no alarm, it's to have no responsibility, and to be able to just do what you want when you want, how you do want to do that. And I think as entrepreneurs and business owners, you sort of go into that frame of wanting that is why you start the business, as well as many other things. But then you realize that it's,
Started for freedom, right?
yeah, value for freedom. You're trying to find the space where you can have your time and the income and everything else. But then it's like, in those moments of downtime, of not having to wake up with the alarm, it's like resetting yourself, giving yourself space and learning about you, giving yourself time to listen. And another thing that's coming up around this is like, I think Maddie said this too, Marie. The best personal development course you can ever do is start a business for yourself. You go into it and you're just constantly learning and finding your barriers, your limiting beliefs and challenges that come up, and how you deal with stress is how you play the game, is how you live the game. And so it's like, in the transitions, how do we turn the alarm off?
Yeah.
You know what changed something for me recently was the idea of, we talk about freedom in when we're, as business owners and stuff, we talk about freedom from, the alarm. We talk about freedom from having a boss. We talk about, but recently I leaned into the idea, actually, what I'm looking for is freedom to. I'm not looking for freedom from, I'm looking for freedom to. Freedom to choose when I get out of bed, freedom to choose clients that I take on, freedom to choose where I go for a holiday each year and for how long. It's freedom to for me rather than freedom from. And that shift did something in me. And certainly in my goal setting, it changed things as well.
I just
That's
also
a
thought
great.
it'd be a great book title. How do I turn the alarm off? I'm just gonna write it.
maybe to be a.
Sorry, Ajay.
I was going to say just maybe the checklist needs off to get self time.
We are losing you. I could not understand.
Self. Oh, can you hear okay or no?
Not really. If you wait a couple of minutes, you might get better reception. Connie, were you going to say something?
Just have. Yeah, it's okay. Just to have self-care time.
Oh yeah.
important.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, Philippa, I love your the title of your keynote speech, because that is so true. And one of the transitions I went through is wanting to be a mom, going through IVF and it not working, and I could have ended up being very resentful. My partner has, well, at that time, he was a little boy. He's a grown man now, but at that time, he was a little boy. I think he was about, I don't know, maybe 8 or 9, probably even less. And so I could have been very resentful about the fact that, I wasn't able to have my own biological child. Like, why didn't this work for me? And I had to sit and really think about it and think about everything that I did have. That I did have this little boy in my life who, was he's an absolute sweetheart. He still is. He's just turned 33 and he's still a sweetheart. But I made a decision, am I going to continue to focus? And, with IVF, of course, you can just keep going and going and going, and you never know if it's really going to work or not. And I thought, why am I going to spend all of my time wishing for something or going through this process and all the stress, the drugs that you're on and everything? It really messes with you. And I thought, why am I going to focus all of my time on that? Yes, I might get lucky and it might work. I might be able to have a biological child. Or can I focus on what I have right now? On the fact that I do have this little boy and I have a partner who, you know, is more than willing to support me through this process. But I just made the decision that I wanted to enjoy what I had rather than keep searching for something that I didn't actually know whether it was going to work or not. And I knew that would keep me in this state of stress and a certain amount of resentment towards friends who are getting pregnant and that type of stuff. So, that was a tough transition. And especially because, when you hear stories of children that have been abused and stuff like that, and it's like, why? Like, why me? Why can't I have that? And you do have to step back and say, but this is what I do have. Can I enjoy that? Will that fulfill me? And my partner and I separated after a number of years, but his son is still a part of my life. So I cherish that because I took that opportunity to really develop a relationship with him while his dad and I were still together. And now, here we are. I think it's been 20 years since his dad and I split up, and he's still part of my life. We still text and check in on each other. So that was a real blessing. And I let that resentment go and just enjoy what I had.
Beautiful.
That's so hard to do, isn't it? Like when you just decide that, but, in a way, when we have been through things before, things unexpectedly, and you're kind of thrown into this world and you do get through it. And like, I think Angie was saying before, you look and it's growth. And then when something like that does happen, you know that, like, I guess we have the life experience as well to make that decision, even if you kind of like last year, I thought everything was great, met a great partner and everything was going well, and then he was hit with cancer, and everything just turned upside down. But although there was like really, really dark moments through that, just I think, even though I think someone said before, like in the moment it's hard, like even though I was, I had the why me, why now, why is everything, those things. But in my mind, I knew that I was going to see the light. Like even though I couldn't control it at the time, I knew that this, in a few months' time, I'd be able to look back and think, understand there was a reason why this was happening, or, so although it was hard, like emotionally, yeah, I did kind of understand eventually, and make, and again, Marie, what you said as well before about being resilient in front of your kids, like that was probably the first time my kids saw me sobbing and everything as well. And, I'm the mum, she fixes everything. She, if we want anything, mum, she's always the strong woman, but, and it's okay. And I find that's really important for boys as well, to show them that, that,
Yeah.
to not, um, to cry, that's fine, to show their emotions
Mm.
and that too. So yeah.
Absolutely.
And I also like found this importance to find that moment of letting go in that holding space.
Mm.
And I don't even know, for whatever reason, just the other day, like 7.5 years later, I actually checked the calendar, how many days it took me from Rob's passing to me falling apart. And it was 19 days. I was in holding space, like literally not letting go of anything. My body switched into, my brain switched into functioning mode when I received that call that my husband deceased in a hotel room in Perth this morning. I went into functioning mode. What needs to be done?
Mm.
Need to be, what do I need to do for the boys? Where do and there's this checklist that you go through. And I now look back and know that was holding, just holding it, holding it, holding it. And then there was Rob's funeral and the preparation and the being there, and there were like 500 people in the room. And it was a beautiful day, but I was still in holding mode. And then the same week of Rob's funeral, I had Jed's first Holy Communion. So it was a Wednesday funeral, Sunday Holy Communion, walking down the aisle. And that night, when everything was over and all the boxes were ticked, and I've been showing up everywhere, I completely fell apart. Primal screaming, completely out of body experience. A space I never, ever in my life want to go back to. It was horrible and so necessary
Mm.
to open that valve of the pressure cooker. I just couldn't close it anymore. Once that was opened and I started screaming, I could not stop it. And I think having gone through this experience, as horrible as it was, there was, and coming back to that growth factor, there was this moment of understanding how important it is that we create those valve moments in between, so the pressure cooker doesn't build up to that moment where you just explode, and it's scary and it's dark and it's big. And I did not want that for my children. And I did not ever want my children to experience me going through it again. I felt such guilt in that moment. And in hindsight, I realized how important it actually was for them to see that, which is so weird. But, that's another whole story. But in a nutshell, allowing ourselves to find that valve so the pressure can't build up that much that we need to explode. That goes for anything, for anger, for rage, for grief, for fear, for anything that builds up in us. We need those valve moments, those moments of creating a soft space for us to land.
Absolutely.
Thank you for saying that.
Mm.
I don't know if you can hear me.
Yeah, we can hear that.
Thank you for saying that. That's beautifully strong.
Mm.
Thank you, Angie.
I resonate with that a lot too, just with the journey that we're on with my husband's health right now, and this idea that I could be in a holding space for the next 5 or 6 years. And right now I don't know what that all looks like, but having those moments where I choose to allow the valve to release, I can see will support that journey really well. So thank you for that. Yeah.
One really great valve that I can highly recommend is sitting right here in the room with us.
Yes.
Breathwork has
Yes.
really, oh my God, it has helped me so much. Like I've worked with Paul really, really intensely for quite some time. And they were always like, different stages in life where I came back to Paul for more breath work, for more holding, for more whatever. But it's been so detrimental and really, really, really important for my mental health. and physically as well, but mental health in particular, to allow those, like literally having the valve moment and breathing out. Nice topic you've chosen there today. Light and breezy as always.
Let's all just take a breath.
Thank you, Paul.
Just to touch on that just quickly, just as a simple tool for anyone listening, but also all of us going through this, and I find myself going to it almost daily lately, but it is that resetting the nervous system. Like, it's nice to go to a day spa or get a massage or go for a walk in the bush, but sometimes it doesn't do the reset that we need. The reset is our nervous system, so the internal part of it that needs that shift. And this is why I love the breath so much, because it is that quick. It's like, I had a couple come to me, and the child's going through some major anxiety, that she works herself up so much that she goes into vomiting, before and during bed. But there's one thing that comes up that really helps release that emotion. It's quite a strange one, but it really, really works. It's called the lion's breath. And it's just like, you're just roaring like a lion. You just take a deep breath in, you stick your tongue out, and you go. But what as strange as that is, sorry, in your face here, but it releases the energy and the emotion that's stored in our bodies. So that primal scream is so necessary for us in our healing and our growth and our transitions. It gives you a moment and space to find a perspective by releasing the emotion and the holding, because our body is intention. It's about finding that space, what's next. And we can't think our way through that. So the quickest and simplest is to shift that nervous system as best as possible. So I think, as Marie's saying, like, the journeys we're going through, the pressure valve is for you to tap into your natural responses that your body does to allow that to happen. And I think society and upbringing and genetics, that we've been taught to hold on to, don't show things, and to be strong for everybody else. Yes, winning until we break and we're not. And so the strength is in being in the pain and going through it, and working yourselves in such a way that you can heal in the journey, not later and after.
I love that.
It's interesting when you said that, Paul. I remember having a client visit me here, and she did, she did TRTP with me, and we actually did it outside. I have a beautiful 7 acres, and we were under the trees, and it was lovely. And in one of her sessions, she had so much rage and anger, and it's not normal for this to happen in my sessions. They're usually very peaceful and calm, but she just had so much pent up stuff around her relationship with her husband that she just needed to scream. And she did. She just roared. And my mum, being, a baby boomer and deep in what culture says around emotions and so on, being, something that we are very stoic about and we hold on to. She said to me later, she said, that sounded demonic, because, she's very religious as well. And I was like, really? So a woman's rage is now not acceptable? Like, why can't we just lean in and be okay with uncomfortable emotions? Yeah, they're not fun to deal with, but they're part of us, and they deserve to be honored and valued for what they do bring. Their information, sometimes they're clearing, but they're a gift, even if they're uncomfortable. And, people talk about this idea of courage and confidence synonymously, right? But they're not synonymous. Confidence is comfortable. You feel good doing it, right? It's easy. Courage is uncomfortable. And it takes us doing something and placing ourselves in a space that isn't going to feel great. And sometimes we have to have the courage to go through the shitty feelings, so that confidence is what we experience on the other side. Because we've done the thing.
Yeah. The confidence is the repeating of the process until you get comfortable with it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm so sorry, but I have to go. I've got an appointment with my son. See you
Oh,
next week.
beautiful. Thank you,
Loved
Marie,
it.
for
Loved
coming.
it.
Love you
Loved
all.
it. Sending big hugs.
Love you all. Thank
Bye,
you.
Marie.
Thank you
Thank
all
you.
very much. We will
Okay.
see you all next week.
Thanks, Philippa. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.